So what even is Homeland Security? I mean, it sounds simple, right? But for more than 2 decades now, the United States has been in this constant struggle to define the very concept that's supposed to shape its national defense. So yeah, let's dive in and really unpack the surprisingly complex and kind of messy story of what Homeland Security actually means.
Our story kicks off right here. Picture it, a chilly morning back in 1974 at BWI Airport. You've got people lining up for a flight to Atlanta. Everything seems totally normal. But, well, it wasn't.
Out of nowhere, this struggling tire salesman named Samuel Bike, who was just boiling with rage at the government, whips out a pistol. He shoots a security guard, storms right onto the jetway, and hijacks the plane. And his demand? It was simple and absolutely terrifying.
He was going to use that passenger jet as a weapon, as a missile. His target was the White House, and his goal was to kill the President of the United States. Sound familiar at all? Balwick was eventually shot by police and ended up taking his own life right there on the plane. But his idea did not die with him. Now here's the crazy part, the real twist. The government already knew something like this could happen. A 1987 Federal Aviation Administration report laid out Bidek's entire plot, and it specifically called out the danger of using an airplane as a weapon. This wasn't some wild, unimaginable scenario. It was a documented official warning sitting right there in a report. And yet, 27 years after Bik's attempt, after the entire world changed on September 11, 2001, the official line from Washington was just complete surprise. Top officials, people at the highest levels, claimed the idea of using planes as missiles was something they just hadn't thought of. But history knows better. And that huge gap, that disconnect between what was known and what was remembered, that's really the key to understanding how Homeland Security even came to be. So you see, the story of Samuel Bike isn't just some bizarre little historical footnote. No, it's a forgotten warning. It's a warning that set the stage for a tragic failure to, connect the dots. And this whole idea of a forgotten warning, it's actually part of a much bigger pattern, because for more than 100 years, American domestic security has never really been about a proactive strategy. It's always been about playing catch-up. And this right here, this gets to the absolute core of the problem. America has consistently built its defenses to fight the last war, or to respond to the last disaster, which always leaves it vulnerable to whatever's coming next. It's a whole history of reaction, not prevention. And you can just see this pattern play out again and again over the decades. The threat of World War I, that gives us civil defense in 1917. The Cold War, the fear of the atomic bomb, that leads to a whole new federal agency in the 50s. Then, after some absolutely devastating hurricanes and earthquakes in the 70s, FEMA is born to handle natural disasters. And then, bam, the first World Trade Center bombing in 1993 suddenly forces the entire focus over towards terrorism. Every single step is a direct reaction to a new, painful lesson. So this long, long history of just reacting brings us to the pivotal moment, the moment when the term Homeland Security was violently shoved into our vocabulary.
And what's incredible is that the idea wasn't even new. In the years leading up to 9/11, multiple high-level commissions, like the famous Hart-Rudman Commission, they saw the writing on the wall. They actually recommended creating a single, unified agency to protect the homeland. A bill was even introduced in March of 2001. But with no big crisis to force the issue, it just went nowhere. Died in committee.
And then the unthinkable happened. The 9/11 attacks provided all the political will that had been missing. And the Department of Homeland Security was created, it felt like almost overnight, basically by stitching together 22 different federal agencies. But in that rush to react, a really fundamental question was never really answered. And that question is the entire reason we're doing this explainer. What exactly is Homeland Security? Let's look at a case that totally exposes the confusion right at its core. Okay, so back in 1993, just a month before the first World Trade Center bombing, a man named Aymal Qassi stood outside CIA headquarters with an AK-47. He opened fire on cars that were just waiting at a stoplight, killing 2 CIA employees and wounding 3 others. His motive was purely political. Now, Qassi was hunted down overseas by the CIA and the FBI in a full-blown international national security operation. But then he was brought back and tried in a local Virginia court for murder. So what was this? Was it a federal act of terrorism or just a local homicide? The answer to that question basically defines the very boundaries of Homeland Security, and at the time, nobody was really sure. This confusion led to 2 competing philosophies. First, you have the terrorism-only view.
This was born directly from the ashes of 9/11, and it says that Homeland Security is strictly and only about counterterrorism. But then there's the all-hazards view, which really got going after the disastrous response to Hurricane Katrina. It argues that Homeland Security has to include everything. Terrorism, sure, but also natural disasters, cybersecurity, border control, the whole shebang.
So, which one won? Which definition is it? Well, the truth is, neither of them. The definition of Homeland Security isn't some fixed point. It's a moving target, constantly being redefined by whatever the latest crisis is.
You can actually watch this happen in real time in the government's own official documents. In 2007, the national strategy was laser-focused on one thing: preventing terrorist attacks. Simple enough? But just 3 years later, the mission had expanded to deal with terrorism and other hazards. Now, in the world of government policy, that is a massive, massive shift.
And this constant expansion has created what experts now call the Homeland Security Enterprise, which is basically a nice way of saying the sprawling, giant collection of agencies with wildly different missions, all just crammed under one roof.
And the result is this department of incredible, almost bewildering diversity. Just think about this for a second. The agency that brings you water after a hurricane, FEMA, is in the exact same department as the Secret Service agents protecting the president. The people who check your passport at the airport are organizationally linked to the Coast Guard sailors who are out there patrolling the high seas. And that is the fundamental challenge here. How do you find a single, unifying mission for a collection of agencies this different?
So, this is where we've landed. The most recent definition describes Homeland Security not as one single mission, but as an intersection. An intersection of, well, basically everything. Threats, disasters, law enforcement, border control, you name it, it's in there. It's a definition that really tries to be everything to everyone. And, as a lot of critics point out, when you try to define everything, you really risk defining nothing at all.
And that brings us to the final, critical question. The entire purpose of this massive, multi-billion-dollar enterprise is to manage risk. But if we're still debating the basic definition of what our mission even is, if we can't decide if we're fighting terrorists or hurricanes or cyber criminals, how can we possibly prioritize our resources and effectively manage the real risks of the 21st century? That's the question that continues to shape the safety and security of every single one of us.